morning, good evening, all those good things. My name is Jason Robbins. This is the first episode of the Pursuing the Dream podcast. Appreciate you joining us today. Hope to have you join us many times in the future as well. So this is obviously our first episode 101. Titling it Intros Are in Order because, of course, you guys know nothing about me. So I need to tell you what this is about, what I'm about, what you're listening to. Pursuing the Dream podcast is going to be a nice get together where we talk about the pursuit of the dream, of course. And what I'd like to do is highlight entrepreneurs and highlight people that have had some sort of adversity, which, let's be honest, that's most everybody, right? But with a focus on people that could have taken maybe a different route and chose to take what would be considered the hard route and to fight through this life of ours and to do something successful, to pursue a dream. So I'm broadcasting today from what we'll call the Dreaming Peddler Studios. How about that? Dreaming Peddler Studios is really just the desk area, the back room of my store. I have a brick and mortar retail business in good old East Texas. I run it with my wife. My wife is Mimi Page, and we do a good job together. And it's a nice little staple in our town of Longview, East Texas. So first off, intros in order. Why did I do this? Doing it because, there's things that I need to get off my chest. People that I'm going to have on, there's things they need to get off their chest. Maybe you need to get something off your chest. This is a weird, hard world we live in. It can be great, but, your great moments are probably sometimes overshadowed by hardships or things you have to fight through in order to find whatever success you're looking for. I would like to highlight some of those stories. I will have some guests. I'm going to start, of course, with my wheelhouse. There's so many people I know, so many people I've encountered, not only through my business, my life, but these are people who have gone through some sort of great trial by fire, maybe some great hardship. Maybe their life is just one big hardship. But the people I'm going to highlight are successful. Some of them are entrepreneurs, or they are pursuers of their dreams. I'm not going to get too touchy-feely about it. This is going to still be a loose, fun show, but we are going to try to be uplifting and, maybe inspirational. We'll try. I've got some great people lined up. I am talking to people that are, again, in my circle of friends, and then branching outward and looking towards other business owners in the area that I'm in. And, speaking of the area I'm in, when you think of Texas, maybe a lot of you that aren't in Texas, people that are going to be listening in the future, let's be real. No one's probably going to be listening to this right off the bat, but maybe if we have some viewers and some listeners that start to come in, maybe you don't know what East Texas looks like, but East Texas is not the Texas of the old Westerns. We are not a big, barren, dusty, small town, cowboys riding in. We definitely have cowboys, but we are a region of trees, a lot of evergreen trees. And, I'm only about 30 minutes from the Louisiana border. So we got a lot of kind of Creole fun, Louisiana fun, while also having a backbone of being Texans. So lots of trees. And it's not the forest. My wife likes to say it's the forest, but it's the woods. I hear they call them the woods. But let's see. So I am going to introduce myself. Again, my name is Jason Robbins. I am a business owner. I am a father, a husband, and I am somebody that I've had a lot of jobs. How about that? At one of the counts, I've definitely passed 100 jobs. Now, that's part of me can be proud of that. The other part can know that it's there's some inconsistencies there. But what 100 plus jobs has done for me, and these are all across the country, different places I've lived, what it's done for me is given me a lot of different little skills that I've been able to combine together over time to eventually do what I've done, which is kind of the pinnacle of uh, of work, in my opinion. The pinnacle of work is to eventually work for yourself and to be able to set your own schedule and to enjoy the fruit of your labor directly. And also, one of the best things is to have a sense of security that you can't quite always have working for somebody else or for somebody else's dream. Now, I'm not knocking it. Like I said, I've had 100 jobs. I've worked for other people's dreams my entire life. Um, I got sick of it. And, I'm also not going to come out and say that, hey, I set out to start working for myself. I'll be honest. I started it out of fear, right? Like a lot of people. I started this business that I'm in today, which is called the Dreaming Peddler, which is wholesale and retail. But I started out of fear during the pandemic, and I've met a lot of great people. Some of them who I'll have on, but met a lot of great people that started businesses during the pandemic, and maybe something snapped a little bit, something connected. But for me personally, it was that I didn't know what was going to happen when everything reopened. It was a global thing, so we all have this shared experience of this big event that we went through. But I, like many others, didn't know what was going to happen, and didn't feel safe. Didn't feel safe working for somebody else again. Um, so I decided to take a risk and made a large bet on myself, and that so far has paid off. It's been lucrative. It's been fun. The business itself is booming on a small scale. Um, comparatively. Most off though, what we sell makes people happy, and daily we get people that are grateful to come into our place. And that's one of the things you can really hope for, is that you are making people happy and you're serving people in some way. So what do we do? And this is not a podcast about my business, but I'm going to start by just giving you a good introduction, kind of telling you what it's about. But I started out as kind of an oddities and antique store, something fun. Um, and my wife had said, let me just have a little area where we sell crystals, gems and crystals and things like that. And fast forward 2.5 years later, that's about 70% of our business. It's definitely one of the biggest aspects of why people come to us. But other than that, we also have a life-size gorilla, not a real gorilla, but an art piece dressed in a tuxedo that is fun. We got monkeys on the wall. It's like a little party in this place. And realistically, what it was I just wanted something fun for young people to be able to come to and do or walk through, uh, in town. So we had opened that up, and since then I've become the primary buyer and um, supplier for the business. Do trade shows and have done some wholesale, um, but it's fun, and it's something that started quickly. And I had not run a business before. I worked for myself as kind of of side hustles, definitely, as I did other things, but I had never done a brick and mortar business. Um, Jumped in quick, didn't have anybody to ask questions. Um, Learned a lot from the internet. Basically, what we have in our tagline is trial by fire. It's going to be one of the themes I want to explore with guests, explore in my own life. Is what do you do after your trial by fire, especially when you fail? Failure's a great thing. Can be a great thing. So I've definitely failed some trials by fire. This one is an ongoing. I don't want to say that I've succeeded, because I think it's ongoing. Every day we have a new task, a new thing I can learn. But today I am grateful that it's been successful, and I will definitely be exploring that in future episodes and going into it, and maybe can dedicate an episode on talking about how I actually started the business and the things we had to do. We got time. We got lots of time together. But one of the main things I do want to focus on this podcast will be entrepreneurship. It's a hard thing to say, right? But I do want to focus on that. I do want to also talk to people that still work for other people. That's not what it is. But I want to talk to people that have some other hardship in their life. I know some of the guests that we have coming on are big inspirations to me, just by living their life and just by the things that they have going. One thing that I want to explore with some of the guests will be parenthood and the things that go into that. Maybe not alienating people like I was just a year ago, because I am a new father. Started pretty late. I'm in my late 30s and just had a kid last year. He's almost 8 months old. And that really changes you, I'll tell you. Makes you get up and start a podcast. But in all seriousness, I will be talking to people that have conquered parenthood and have done a really good job and are examples of what we need in the world and things that I hope to live up to. Talk to some people that, again, maybe aren't entrepreneurs in their own right, but are pursuing being an entrepreneur and starting their own thing and working for themselves. I also want to talk to some people that work for other people permanently, and that's totally fine. But within that, have other dreams, other things that they want to conquer, and have conquered those or are in the process of doing so. Talk to them. And again, I'm starting with my wheelhouse. That's what we do. But I know some fascinating people. You will meet some fascinating people in your own area, in your own friend base, that have these stories. And then hopefully, depending on how many episodes we're going to be doing here, you can branch out, maybe do some remotes and meet some authors or speakers, etc., etc. I do also want to incorporate some video into these podcasts. I will work my way up. Full disclosure, I've never done a podcast, right? I've never done a YouTube video. I haven't done anything like that. I've wanted to, because we need dialogue. God, I love hearing myself talk. So there you go. Solves problems. But I also ultimately would like to help. I would like to have people that listen to this and find something of value. Um, I love several podcasts, and I always find something of value. Sometimes it's great to listen to music on the road, but listening to a podcast, I always end up knowing more than when I started it. Maybe somebody can learn a little something from this, relate to it. At the end of this, I will be giving out an email address, and I'm going to welcome emails from you guys too about your own life and maybe your story that I can share. It'll be a communal effort. How about that? So, I got my notes here. Why the title, right? We went through a little bit about it, but pursuing the dream, what does that mean? Well, first, one of the things you'll learn when you try to start a podcast is, man, there's a lot of podcasts out there. And you'll have this great title in mind. And not only will there be a podcast that already has that title, there's going to be 5 of them. And maybe they phrased it a little bit better. I, for instance, was looking for trial by fire, or trials by fire, right? And there's already a guy in Scotland or Ireland that has it, and he's like a forester. That's awesome. I'm totally for it. But he doesn't operate it anymore. But he definitely has the social media on lockdown. So I went through my top 3 titles, and pursuing the dream was out there. It was available. There is also one called Chasing the Dream, and it's a show about kind of the debt crisis and how hard it is to work. And I'm glad that I saw that too, because you have 2 different things here. Is Chasing the Dream does have one connotation. It's the people out there that are trying to chase the American dream. I'm talking to people, or I'd like to talk to people about pursuing the American dream. It is a constant pursuit. It's not something that we stop. Maybe you've got 15 mil in the bank, you're maxed out, you got properties, and you have pursued the American dream, and you are sitting pretty by the pool. Everything is good. Many blessings to you. That's awesome. Maybe you'll still find something here, but I think a lot of us are still grinding along. We're doing this every day, trying to get to where we want to go. And what is that dream? It's different for everybody, of course. For some people, it's not having to work anymore. Hopefully not. I think having something that you pursue is important till the day you're not here. But okay, so we're learning a lesson about turning off our computer noises. We'll be learning a lot of lessons. Stick with me. It'll get better. Pursuing can be also just trying to get yourself to where you don't have any worries anymore. And I know that's pretty common. I think the problems in the world are boiled down to that bare necessity. Just not having to wake up and worry about where things are going to be coming from, whether it's rent money or food and water. Keep it relative. But that's what I'd like to focus on, is the pursuit of. And in my tagline says, this is finding success and staying cool in life's many trials by fire. Well, what is a trial by fire? I've got a little dictionary.com definition here for you. A test of one's abilities to perform well under pressure. Macmillan Dictionary has it good as well. Difficult tests of someone's strengths and abilities. Everybody has them. Everybody's either going through them, has gone through them, or you will go through them at some point. Someone's going to have something, whether that is illness, heavy debt, death in the family, maybe something that happens to you. It's something that comes suddenly, or maybe you see it on the horizon and you see it coming at you like a freight train. It's something that you have to deal with. That's part of life. Some big thing, and then you're in it, and then suddenly you have to get out of it, and then you have to recover from it. That can be considered trial by fire. So that's the stuff I'm looking for. That's the stuff I'm going to be interested in. Is what do we do after the fact? People that have a crossroads. It's another way to look at it. Something that I'm going to be talking about a lot is easy road and the hard road. Easy road is long and paved and really easy on the legs, right? You can jog it, but it doesn't stop. Most of the time, it just goes on and on and on. You don't ever get to your destination, and sometimes it loops around and you're right back where you started. Hard road is full of peaks and valleys, a lot like investment. And you will encounter many a valley. Sometimes you spend a long time in those valleys. Sometimes you're on the peaks for the majority of your trip. But at the end of it, you have accomplished something, and you've definitely been on a journey. And you know something that you didn't know before. So, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about investing, the importance of getting some money out there after you've gotten yourself out of debt, of course, but getting some money out that's going to start working for you. I am always learning myself. The things that I know now, I've had to teach myself. These are things I wish I knew in my early 20s. God bless all this new generation that they just happen to know it out the womb. That's awesome. But I think a lot of us didn't know much. Everyone, has to learn something at some point. And so the importance of, getting yourself debt free and getting yourself invested in whether that's, your 401k, your IRA plan, just regular market trades. You got to have money out there. So that's something that we're going to look at. And then I'll also keep you updated on a new venture that I'm doing, which is pursuing a real estate license. And, I'll look back and listen to this after I've gotten the real estate license and can say, hey, that's when that was. I'm halfway through the school portion. I'm a guy, once I start something, I got to power through it as fast as possible. So I've done half the school in the last 3 weeks. I'm going to do the other half in the next 3 weeks. And then I'm going to get my license and attach myself to a broker ASAP. I wanted to start another business without having to invest any capital. And getting your real estate license is an excellent way to uh, work for yourself without having to invest the type of money that I did, opening like a brick and mortar like I did. What are my qualifications? So I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. I am not a financial advisor. Okay. I'm basically self taught. Had a little bit of college. I've gone to probably 5 or 6 colleges across the country, just dropping in and taking classes that would interest me. But most of my knowledge was gained in that good old school of hard knocks. A lot of information I know was learned in those 100+ jobs that I've talked about. One thing I've done is just always kept learning. I'm also very observant, and um, I'm always trying to gain knowledge. I have an infinite curiosity about things, and that's always good. But I'm not an expert in any one field. How about that? I'd love to talk to experts and bring them on and learn from them as well, as I hope some of the listeners would learn, how you guys would learn. But I'm in process, so uh, that's who I am. So a bit more about me personally is I am actually not a Texan. I am born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and I had a lineage of, as my mother says, it was 6 generations of Texan blood that was then cut by my mom leaving Little East, Texas at 18 to go have me in Los Angeles as she pursued her dream of being an actress. So I grew up, was born in what they call the Valley, San Fernando Valley. And then I was raised primarily through my youth in Hollywood. And it's not the Hollywood, again, the same way I talked about, you got the picturesque version of Texas, or the Old West type of Texas. And that's not it. Well, the image of old Hollywood, glitzy Hollywood, happy Hollywood was not the Hollywood that I grew up in. I lived off of Franklin Avenue. There's a famous building called the Hollywood Towers. That was the big step up from the little studio apartment we had before. But I spent most of my younger years in the Hollywood Towers off the 101. Went to the same school as Michael Jackson. Interestingly enough, it's Gardner Elementary. You can still drive by and see the Michael Jackson Auditorium. There were these gigantic portraits of him all around the school. It was the weirdest place. Really, really was. I don't know if it's like that anymore. I do know that during the while he was still alive, during the whole, sexual abuse thing, the kids and all that, that they did put up a big piece of plywood over his name, which was very effective. And then as soon as he died, they took the plywood down. So that was Hollywood. But I went to that school, moved to Pasadena for a while as a kid, and then we settled in the area that would be kind of my home base for the majority of my youth, which was the Valley, again, the same place I was born. Uh, LA is a weird place. Most of the people that grew up there would maybe know what I'm talking about, but it's always been like an abusive relationship to me. It's hard to get away from for some people, and then you get away and kind of calls you back. You're like, oh, there were some good times, but you're always better off being outside of it. I know a lot of people that have stayed. I know that a lot of people I went to high school with, for instance, had stayed. God bless them. I mean, I'm glad people found happiness, but I split out as soon as possible. I left and was was sort of forced to move to Texas. We'll cover that maybe in a different episode, but I had to leave rather quickly at 18. Moved in with grandparents in Dallas, and set to working in restaurants, which would be a theme for most of my early 20s. While in Dallas, though, I was, not very content. I felt like that there was a whole other world out there, which of course there is. I was also just absolutely in love with Catcher in the Rye and, bands like Interpol and The Strokes. And I had this fascination with the East Coast. I'd never been there, but I had this fascination. So one of the Christmases that I was out there, I decided I was going to take myself on a little vacation. So just turned 18 and went out to New York for a couple of weeks and felt like I was home. Had never felt like I was home before. And that was the first time I was like, oh yeah, I get this. You know, coming from one of the largest cities in America in LA, but just feeling like I never had a culture or kind of a congruent theme um, through the town and the experience. When I got to New York, I was like, oh, this is everything I'd missed. Everyone there seemed like they were a part of something. It was being a New Yorker. It didn't matter your background; you're still a New Yorker. You don't really say that with LA. You're not like an Angelino necessarily. You just live in different parts of Los Angeles. So I went back to Texas. I made it my entire purpose to move to New York. I had several kind of back alleyways of getting there. I had met a young lady while I was out there and had this wonderful um, you know little quick love story in my head. And so when I went back, I was like, hey, I'm gonna move and come out. Well, she's like, well, I don't live in New York, but I live in Philly, and by the way, I got a boyfriend. So but she did offer her couch and said, as long as you guys get along, you're happy to stay with us. And so I was like, yeah, that's good enough. It's the East Coast. It's all the same. So I moved out to Philly, and the boyfriend was, of course, very very cautious of this idea. The moment that I met this guy, him and I were best friends. We got along great, and so that dude was my partner in crime. The three of us were all great friends. I got to meet all of their friends as well. This big circle of kids living in Philly. All of them were art students, and put into college, and were pretty confused why I was out there. Well, why was I out there? Like I said, I wanted to get to New York. It felt like home. I also fancy myself a writer. Still do. It's a private passion of mine, and it's something that I'm still going to be pursuing. And by putting it out there to all you guys, that's obviously now more solidified. It's always good to talk about those things, but I wanted to go out there and write, and to a certain degree, I did. I've still got all of those chapters, but I got through Philly, which I'm never going to go back there again. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say about that. But they the couple ended up breaking up, and the guy moved to the Jersey Shore. He was from Jersey, but he'd moved to the Jersey Shore, and again, not the type of Jersey Shore you're picturing. And I was guilty of kind of having an image or an idea of what the Jersey Shore was, and not necessarily. This was before the TV show, the MTV show, but of the Bruce Springsteen and the Jack Nicholson Jersey Shore. And where we moved was not that. It was Asbury Park. I've since heard that Asbury is an amazing place, and it's super rich and exclusive. It was not that at all. It was a complete. I mean, the majority of it was vacant. First off, there were just abandoned houses everywhere. Lots of crackheads. And no offense to anyone that lives in Asbury Park. It was a fun time, but I had to get through that portion. So I was just slowly climbing up the coast, and eventually got myself onto the train and said, "See you later," to the job I had there, and to my buddy. And I was like, I'm just gonna go do it. So I went up to New York finally and lived in New York, and had a long, fruitful relationship with New York City, um, that then ended in kind of another abusive relationship. So I guess I just have abusive relationships with big cities. New York is rough though, and when you're 19, 20 years old, it's a hard life, when you don't want to live broke or live with a bunch of people and all that. But those are things I'll get into in future episodes. Maybe just have certain themes, but the theme there is, of course, pursuing a dream, and that I did have the dream of going out there and writing a book about traveling and a book about observation. And I've got the chapters, I've got the experience, I've got the pictures and all that, but I'm still pursuing the dream of actually getting it together and putting the thoughts down on paper. So that's one thing I'm still trying to do. But after that, I came back to Los Angeles. I left during one of the worst winters they had ever had. 3 storms hit each other all at the same time, and it got colder than any cold I'd ever known in my entire life. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I went and I got a dog from the local shelter and hopped on a plane, and I moved back to Los Angeles. Coming back to Los Angeles was, a mixed bag, definitely. But everything happens for a reason. I had come back and kicked around for a while, met a whole new group of new friends out there, and ended up working and just kind of living and keeping myself busy and preoccupied. That gets boring, living and not really doing something, not pursuing the dream that you had, or putting it into a box and kicking it out of the bed. The dream being wanting to write and wanting to do stuff. So I eventually got so bored that I'm like, well, I'm going to start going down to Hollywood, where I grew up, and I'm going to go down to the Sunset Strip and pursue one of my greatest passions, which was music. I didn't want to be a musician, not by any means. I've never claimed to be a musician. One skill I did have was repping people and, showing people and bands or things, showing them in the best light. Because I had a lot of enthusiasm for things that I believed in or things that I liked. I also took pictures. So I would go down to the Sunset Strip and I would find bands and take pictures of the show and try to find inspiration. And, I found inspiration in 2 bands that I ended up developing a friendship with and some sort of professional capacity with. And one of the bands is now defunct, but the other band had some mid-level success. Maybe in other episodes I'll talk more about who they were, and I definitely know that I'll talk about one of the biggest jobs that I've had, which was with them. But long story short, working with and around those bands eventually led me to a little party across from the Viper Room. And when I say little party, it was a parking lot with lawn chairs and a little gas grill and some salmon on the grill and on the pavement around all these cars. That was a crazy party. But I met my wife there. Both of us had been dragged out. It was actually my birthday that night, and I was already back at my house after being out, and one of the bands that I'm talking about with they gave me a call and they're like, you got to come out and we'll drive and all that. I'm like, there's no way I'm leaving, and they forced me to go out, and thank God they did. I'll later find out that my wife was in a similar position. She was already home. She had already been out, and she was back home, and she had been convinced to go out and come to this great Hollywood party. And of course, it was salmon burgers in a parking lot. But we met each other and pretty much started dating the first night we met. I took her out to Mel's Diner and got her some French fries. And we've been together ever since. So we had lived together for some time and started in Koreatown, which is near downtown Los Angeles. Ironically, it's not all Korean. It used to be, and there's still a huge Korean population, but it's mostly Hispanic. Maybe I'm wrong on the ratio, but it's mostly Hispanics, and probably to this day, majority would probably be hipsters. But we were there for a while. Crime got bad. We eventually left and moved to a nice little house in Burbank. We lived in Burbank for 8 years and had some great times. But I was doing charity work down on Skid Row. And if you guys don't know what Skid Row is, a quick Google search will give you a big, healthy dose of what Skid Row is. It's basically the wash bin and the storm drain that Los Angeles had set up for the mentally ill and the addicts and the people without homes. Um, you know, it's like a street festival for all the people that don't have anything. Um, Primarily people with mental illness, and I know that just because we would see the vans come down and shepherd these people out in their hospital gowns. Some of them with their head shaved, where you could tell that they had some sort of, I'm not going to say they had lobotomies, but I don't know why the psychiatric hospital do that. They just shave the head, and sometimes it'd be bleeding from getting these rough head shaves. Anyway, I digress. I was doing some charity work down there with a group called the Monday Night Mission, and it was led by a great guy named Mel. No longer happens. I'm sure it was from the pandemic that they stopped, but I don't know. I had this drive in me to go down there and um, do this charity work, and eventually, again, something we'll talk about in future. Eventually I was going down there, maybe looking for a fight. I don't know. I worked the security side, and what that means is we would form and take other people out that would have the sandwiches, and we would have hand out sandwiches late at night. And then we needed Mel to be in the street watching the group, and then he would have kind of his second in command, and then he would have some other guys standing around the group ready for a fight, because we didn't have any sort of, the police would pull up and laugh at us and drive off. But I eventually, through coming there pretty often, became the second in command for a lot of the nights. And I don't know. You spend enough time down there, and suddenly you're looking for issues, and you start getting a really weary eye towards people. And so, look, you got to understand that people coming up with butcher knives in their waistbands, and people that are either medicated or self-medicated with things off the street. We had a lot of hairy issues, and a lot of danger. There were many, many great people. Don't get me wrong, many, many great people that were down there, but I got a little hardened, and he had always warned me. He was like, you can't do this every night. He was doing it every night, but he's like, you can't do it every night. You're gonna burn out. He's like, I need you to space it out. But I was coming sometimes five nights a week, and I was getting this big heavy dose of kind of the underbelly of Los Angeles, of my hometown, seeing the population grow down there, seeing it spread, seeing the quality of life get worse and worse. Um, and then I was contracted by the LA Times. I don't necessarily I think it was because I wrote a letter to the mayor, but they reached out to me and commissioned me to do a piece. So that was kind of the first time I was a professionally hired writer. But they commissioned me to do a piece that would be a 5-day journal of my time down there. And, they told me to pay me, which was awesome, and that they would feature my photographs along with writing. Well, I, of course, wrote 75,000 words. And they were like, it is a newspaper. We want, like, maybe 2,000, 3,000. And they pushed it up, but the final product is not what I set out to write. And I have this long, great article that I was very proud of that got butchered. And but it did get printed, and I have some pictures, and all of those were put together. But it was shortly after finishing the article that I started to get this itch, this weird, not a not a physical itch. I didn't catch anything down there, but I started to get this itch in the back of my mind that you know, if something happened in this city in Los Angeles on whole, that we would not be in a very good position. My wife and I, and the people on whole, that town was going to have some problems if something had happened. And I couldn't explain what it was. And I just said that, kind of put my wife aside and I'm like, look, we're not equipped to face any sort of economic disaster or, one of the big problems you have growing up in California, everyone's worried about the big one, the big earthquake. So maybe that's what I was thinking that was going to happen. I definitely didn't think it would be something like the pandemic. I just felt like something was going to happen and that we weren't set up to be able to face it. So that was the first kind of talks that we had about moving. And look, my wife is also a Los Angeles native. She was born and raised around the Santa Monica area. So we had this very tough decision of saying, do we get up and go? Do we leave? I had recently, one of my 100 plus jobs was one of the best jobs that I had is I worked for a large scale print manufacturer. We did about 70% of the makeup industry, and East Coast operations had Apple. It was a big, big company. And I had somehow worked my way up to revenue manager. So I was overseeing most all of the revenue going in and coming out from the West Coast operations. And mind you, they typically want an MBA for that position. I don't think that they even knew that I only had 6 college credits. So I had recently laid myself off. Right, we had a big issue with one of the salespeople coming in and taking some of the business and leaving and et cetera, et cetera. But they had to go through and lay off a large portion of the staff. I kind of helped with that exit effort. I know that the company's still together, but it's a lot smaller than when I had been there. So I had helped them with the exit effort and then basically wrote a letter and said, I need to get out of here. So they gave me a little severance and we had our money in the savings and so I told my wife, I'm like, look, aside from this feeling I have that something's going to happen, we have an opportunity where either I'm going to just go back to work or we're going to get the hell out of here. And we chose plan B. And so we were looking at several places across the U.S. We'd done a fair amount of traveling and through, me being a tour manager in the past, which again, I'll, talk about in another episode, but we both loved Nashville. So Nashville was on the list. My wife had spent some time in her youth near Vegas. So we were looking at Henderson, which is where a lot of people from LA ended up flocking. But we had a list of 4 or 5, and my mother had moved a couple years prior to all this. She had moved back to her area where she had grown up, which was East Texas. And so she was trying to tell me, hey, look, this area is not what you remember, and this town is kind of on the up and up. So I was like, I'll come out there and see it. And I came out and it was awesome. This town of Longview is awesome. So it's got 80,000 plus, which was at the time the same population as Burbank, the town where we were living. And I was meeting tons of great locals and also transplants. I was going to coffee shops that could have existed in LA or New York and ramen spots and all these amazing things while having a great cost of living and being, it's just peaceful, full of nature. And that's mostly all my wife wanted was nature. So we got this great house and new life, move out here. And, I'd been talking to several recruiters and also temp agencies. I'd contacted them from LA and gave them resumes, told them my background. And I was getting unanimously that, hey, this is a great place to come and we can't wait to get you into work. And we've got these positions already lined up. So I'm like, awesome, get out here. And, I tell them, hey, look, I need some time to adjust and calm down. I just got out of this corporate job. I would like to just relax for a little bit. So, like, great, hit you guys up in 6 months. And I took the opportunity to go back to school. There was a nice little community college here. I wanted to just go and do something other than grinding. And so I took some classes, and that was awesome. Went halfway through my associates in about 9-10 months. And right at the end of that period, COVID hit. And like everyone else in the world, things got really uncertain. And we were in a new town. We had money in the bank. We had some savings, but that's finite. And we kind of looked around and said, who knows how long this will last? And we might be in a bad spot, especially when the temp agents and the recruiters that I had been talking to all put, out of business in their windows. Some of them shut down. Some of them kept their business going, but a couple of them did not. So we went through the pandemic like most people did. You just keep your head down. I did not hoard a bunch of toilet paper, but we did it all right. Got the house together. It was a great experience of being able to get adjusted to the house we were in, and to reacquaint with each other and play tons of board games. We adopted a puppy at the time. We'd never had a puppy before and got to raise him. It was awesome. It was a nice little time to collect. I did have that nagging thing in the back of my mind of when is this going to end and what am I going to do at the end of it? And we were supporting a local coffee shop right towards the end where people could still go out. You kept masks on and you couldn't go indoors, but we would be able to drive around. And down the street from us, a local coffee shop had just opened up. Great little coffee place in a strip mall. And I remember specifically the day we saw it for the first time. We saw it from across the street. We saw a sign. We said, let's go support a small business, right? Went and got a cup of coffee. So that's awesome. And that we'll be back. And the next time that we had gone, we pulled our car into one of the spots, pulled in front of a vacant spot next to the coffee shop, a vacant unit. And it was big glass windows and, just kind of trashed a little bit. You could see that there was trash in there and there were holes on the wall and old carpet and everything. But my wife went in and, I know that we were able to go in finally. You couldn't sit down in there, but you can go pick up your coffee. So she went in and I sat in the car waiting and I watched a young couple. And if I ever find them, I really have to thank them for the moment of inspiration. But I saw a young couple come out of the coffee shop with their coffee in hand. They looked to the left and they looked to the right. And they didn't have anything to do on their little date, their little outing. So they shrugged and they got into their car and they drove away. And something clicked. And I said, I'm going to take a chance and I'd like to open a business and give those people, along with everyone else that are coming out of this weird time and that want to step out and feel normal again, I want to create a place that they can walk through and do that. So, not only to sell things, but also make a little bit of a spectacle, a little bit of a fun place where you would look from floor to ceiling and see interesting, fun things, get a smile, walk through with your coffee, and then go on. And I didn't know if that was going to be like a walk-through museum type thing, if it was going to be a store. But I dug in and, look, I don't have the greatest memory. That's one thing that I'll talk about and discuss is I don't have the greatest memory at all. I have to go by notes and go by pictures are one of the best things for me, going through your iPhone and like, oh yeah, I was there in that year. And also plus the pandemic. I know a lot of people, you just have a whole period of your life missing. But from the pictures I see, I know that it happened overnight, basically. From the moment that I got out of the car and I went and took a picture of that empty spot. And then the next day I recorded myself buying an LLC. And the day after that, I had my logo. Drew my logo, and it's this frog dude. He's like a vagabond frog guy, lounging on a mushroom, and then I have it framed by our name, the Dreaming Peddler. And so we opened up right at the end of the pandemic. One thing about all the businesses that opened up during the pandemic is you could not get any sort of financial aid. There were lots of businesses that were still affected by the pandemic. I was still affected by the lack of people going out and doing it. But, I also, to be fair, I started into a venture in that environment, but I did not get any sort of aid. Loans were very hard to come by. So we just invested that severance money that I was talking about, invested our savings. Every penny went into it, plus credit cards. And that's what you're supposed to do, is put everything you have into a venture. And so the debt that we have today, some of that is still lingering from years ago and putting everything we had into this. What's the trade-off? Well, we have equity. We have one big, great investment, and we have inventory, and we have equity in this business that we built. But it's been very successful, all things considered, and we're very grateful to have it. A lot of people liked the place, and it accomplished the thing that I set out to do. And my wife had become a big part of it, which I didn't think was going to happen initially. This was just my thing. But she's become a huge part of it, and now she's kind of the person, because we sell crystals and things like books and the tarot cards and the sage and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I'll be the first to tell people that come through the door, this was not my bag when I started. She's always been into the crystals and all that, but I quickly, upon seeing the success and the demand for it, quickly became an expert in my field, as much as I consider myself to be today. So now I'm the primary buyer, but I am also the guy that just runs the business, and I kind of sit in the back. And I've got a great store manager and my wife, who most people come in to see. So that's where we are today. And I had mentioned before, I'm pursuing the real estate license because, I am leaning hard on a successful business to help support our life. And that's breaking one of those great laws that I'm sure that it's written a bunch of books that I have not read, but you learn pretty quickly that you can't bleed your company when it's in its infancy still. And we're about 2.5 years old, and it's successful, but I need to keep investing in my business. But I also have to take a salary, to support life. And it's a delicate balance, a very delicate balance, especially when you have an employee or employees, when you're dealing with inventory that needs to be restocked. Your margin is a very delicate thing to deal with. And to be able to not only get myself out of, the little bit of debt that we have, but also to save for a home and to take care of a growing baby. Those are things that demand a steady income. And so I can provide a steady income for myself, but it's going to be at the sacrifice of not letting the business grow the way that it needs to. And that's your nest egg. That's your equity. It's something that can be eventually sold, or, you can make it into a franchise, or I can continue it in whatever location I want to go. So I can't bleed it. So that's where you have to start looking for other ventures. And that's what real estate is going to be for me. That's what that venture is going to hopefully be. But I am going to give it my all. I'll give it the same that I've given this current business, which is successful. And I think that if I apply those same principles and the same determination, that it's going to be a success in some way. So that's me. Hey, how you doing? That's me. And there's, of course, a lot that I left out, and there's things that I purposefully will the things I purposefully left out so that I could focus on those and make those points of other shows, which would be trials by fire, individual ones. And what did I learn out of those? And, things about the certain points in my trip and my living in New York and certain points of my career, both on the corporate side and jobs that I've had. And then, I know that there's one whole episode on being a tour manager, which was absolutely amazing and terrifying, and one of the most difficult things I've pulled off next to opening this business. So we've got lots to talk about. This is fun. I've had fun. It's been great to talk in a room by myself, and I feel like I've been talking for an hour, which I have. So listen, I appreciate your time, and I hope that you will join me next week. And I am hoping to do this on a weekly basis. Only thing that'll keep me from it is if I have some sort of business event or business thing that I have to do. But I'm also going to be trying to take my little rig, which right now I've got, for all you gearheads, I've got like a dynamic microphone hooked up to a Focusrite, and that's hooked up to my MacBook Air. It is very high tech. But I am hoping to take this with me. And then, one of the things I do for this business is I go on the road sometimes, go to trade shows. And those are kind of the reward for me. Those are my favorite time of year, is going to the trade shows and doing my purchases, because I get to see friends that I've made in the industry, not only vendors, but fellow business owners. And it's a fun time. So I'm hoping, this next trip that I do is going to be to Franklin, North Carolina. We're going to be bringing our baby for the first time. It'll be his first road trip, bringing my mother and my wife. So if anyone out there knows North Carolina is awesome. Franklin is one of the most beautiful places. I never knew anything about it. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It's old Cherokee land, old Cherokee Nation meeting ground right in Franklin, nestled by the Smoky Mountains. It's a beautiful place, good energy in the land. There's lots of natural gemstones that grow up there. But they hold one of the trade shows there once a year, and so, or twice a year, I think. But we're going to that in July, and so I am hoping to bring my rig, maybe do a couple interviews with some of the vendors that I work with, and these guys are awesome. One of them in particular, he's from the Middle East, and just one of the most interesting people I've ever met. But there's some great stories in there about their own trials and their hardships, and then also the success of running their business, what it takes to do that. So outside of that disclaimer, I am hoping to do this every Sunday. And then, God willing, these will be uploaded Mondays, and you can find those episodes new each week. Tall order for someone that has a lot going on and has never done a podcast, but I'm committing to it. Trial by fire, right there. So again, I appreciate it. I encourage you to write into me. And the great thing about this is, if you are listening many months or even hopefully, you're listening a year later. That's when I get my first viewers, a year later. But at any point it works, I can tell you what our email address is, and you can send me an email. So that is going to be info@pursuingthedreampodcast.com. Again, it's info@pursuingthedreampodcast.com. Send me your stories. Send me a question, maybe. I'll try my best to answer it. Maybe one of our guests can answer it. Or send me your inspirational thing, or the trial, the whatever you did that I can share. Maybe you help somebody else too. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, and YouTube, all searched by looking up Pursuing the Dream. We are so official here. We have Facebook and Instagram, which is going to be @Pursuing the Dream Podcast. So I appreciate you guys. We shared this time. I am really looking forward to next week's podcast. Like I said, I think this is fun. I hope you enjoyed my presentation and my cadence and my great LA dialect. I hope that all of these things came across properly. But until next time, this is Jason Robbins for the Pursuing the Dream podcast, and I'm gonna sign off with a little thought, and it comes from a sign that I have sitting in our house that I've kind of looked at every day since I moved out here. It was something that my mother put into our house before we moved, and it's a little thought, and maybe I'll sign off with a little thought, or maybe I'll say the same thing each time, but here's what it is. It's that maybe everything you're going through right now is leading you to a dream that's bigger than you can imagine. Something good to consider. Maybe everything you're going through right now is the process of getting you to where you need to be. I know that all of the things that I was like, hey, my life is at the shittiest point it's ever been at. I am so thankful for all of those events because it got me to where I am today. And ultimately that's the dream of having a kid and having a good marriage, having a successful business, and having a very loose control. I don't try to have a tight control, but I have a loose control on my life at the moment. Thank God. It's possible for you too. Possible for everybody. Until next time, until next week, hope everyone has an amazing time. Talk to you later. Bye.